The Simpsons.
All right, our next guest, you may recognize her voice. She is the voice of the ever-intelligent and saxophone-playing Lisa Simpson. Her talents, though, extend far beyond Springfield. She's an accomplished actress, novelist, laundry detergent saleswoman, and she's the co-host of an award-winning true crime podcast called Small Town Dicks. What is going on? Yeardley Smith, our guest.
Hi, Gentry. It's Yeardley.
Yes, it's great to hear you, Yeardley. How are you today?
I'm terrific, thanks. How about yourself? Where in the world are you today?
I'm in South Florida, down in the Gulf Coast, or now it's the Gulf of America, I believe, that I'm on today.
Right. Okay.
So you have this new podcast. I'm very impressed that you're like a pioneer in podcasting. You've been doing this show since 2017, way before it was Vogue.
That's true. Yep. We're about to launch season 16. We do 2 seasons a year. So we do like a fall season and a spring season. And on the podcast, I co-host with identical twin detectives, Dan and Dave, and Paul Holes, who helped break the Golden State Killer case. And when we have guests on, it's a detective because all of our cases are told by the detective who investigated it.
How does your husband feel about the name of the show? You know, I know your husband's on the show with his identical twin, but the show called Small Town Dicks. The first time you hear it, you know, it could make your husband feel a little less, if you understand what I'm saying. Please explain the name. The name.
Know what's funny? It was Dan, my husband, who came up with the name, and it was a joke because Dicks, of course, being the noir slang for detective, and we all laughed, and we were like, "Oh, it's so funny! It'll be great!" Because I think we thought 7 people and our moms would listen, and that would be it. And now we're at 65 million downloads, and so we're like, it's a terrible acronym. And it's a title that makes a lot of people blush. So maybe we didn't think that through so much.
I'm just fascinated myself, Yeardley, with true crime, everything that goes into taking down the bad guy. Now that you've been hosting this podcast and learning these stories and getting a perspective on the justice system and the criminal investigation process, how has your perspective changed on the way this process works?
I think one of the things that really struck me is that if the investigation is done the right way, as we always say on the podcast, like most cops, I think, really proceed with integrity and they feel like this job is a calling because it's such an unusual job, literally, to meet people on their worst day. It's just not normal. And so one of the things that's really struck me is that if you're doing the job the right way, all of the dominoes need to line up perfectly in order for justice to be served. Because, again, if the justice system is working the way it's intended, then anything can derail a case. And a murderer can walk free, right? There are so many, this idea that you are innocent until proven guilty. Again, if it's working the way it should, that's a very high bar to meet, as it should be. And so I'm really struck by how much dedication and effort and crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's and triple checking your work is just part of their day-to-day in order for things to go the way they should.
Our guest, Yeardley Smith, she is the host of this podcast called Small Town Dicks. It's award-winning, and the band is hitting the road. Portland, do you hear me? They're coming. Seattle, Salt Lake City, Denver. You guys are taking the show live for the first time. You a little nervous? You excited? How did this come about to do live shows?
Yeah, so, it's become sort of popular for a podcast to do live shows if you're a successful podcast. And this is our first live tour, although we've done a couple of CrimeCon conventions and we've been very warmly received there. It's been quite successful. And as an actor and stage being my first love, I'm super excited about it. I think the guys are a little more nervous. This isn't their natural habitat. But I can tell you that having been on stage on CrimeCon, these guys are money. Like when the lights go on, they really bring it. And what's great is we have such an incredible fan base that I would say to them, you guys could read a cookbook and people would be like, yes, oh my God, I love it. Of course, we're going to bring something far more interesting than them reading a cookbook, but it's a great opportunity for them to interact with the people who have supported us for so long, and I'm really excited about that.
Find out more about the live shows by going to Small Town Dicks, that's with an S, multiple dicks, that's smalltowndicks.com, and you can find out about the podcast, you can find out about the live shows. Have you ever, during all these episodes that you guys have done, almost 100, I believe, but have you ever broken out in Lisa Simpson in the character at all during any of these episodes?
No, but if this is me and this is Lisa Simpson, you can see that we're not that far apart. And we do get a fair amount of mail from our listeners saying it tickles me pink to hear Lisa Simpson swear, because sadly I cuss like a sailor. And so they're like, oh, my God, I can hear it. But we talk about the worst things people do to each other on this podcast. I feel like I would rather protect Lisa Simpson from that in real life if I can.
It's pretty impressive, that character, Lisa Simpson, and all the characters. A 36th season right now running on Fox, the longest running American primetime scripted TV series. And that's impressive right there. One thing I always found interesting about the show, The Simpsons, is that it's frozen in time. Lisa Simpson, as far as I know, was 8 years old in 1989, and she's 8 years old in 2025. Is that true?
It is true, and the funny thing is that we've actually had several birthday episodes for Lisa, and she's 8, and then we have a birthday and she turns 8, and we just don't talk about that.
So has there ever been a time in an episode where they fast forward to see what Lisa is up to in her adult life, or Bart, or is that just something that never is talked about?
Yes, no, multiple times, actually. There's a really well-known episode called Mr. Lisa Goes to Washington, and it's Lisa Becomes President. It's a great episode. We've actually done, I don't know, I want to say probably a couple of dozen, maybe even, of flash forwards where you see where all the Simpsons end up. And it's great because it's different each time and unexpected. And people ask me often, what would you like Lisa Simpson to do? And I feel like, really, she's kind of done it all. Like, she's done, I mean, if you're president, I don't know. Is there another bigger job? I think it's probably the worst job to have, but still, she was happy to take it on. And Bart, of course, was one of her advisors, which is hilarious and most unlikely.
One of the best relationships and one of the more interesting relationships, it seems to me, is Lisa and her dad, Homer. They have this, try to find ways to relate, but I can still feel that father-daughter love. How does Lisa truly feel about Homer?
You know, I love those episodes, too, and because the both of them, they're so different, but they're really actively trying to find some common ground. And I think the love they have for each other is never in question. It's just sort of, if our interests are so different, where's the crossover? And what's incredibly touching to me is that Homer, who can be, extraordinarily distracted and forgetful and sort of a failure to launch in so many ways, in those episodes when he's trying to connect with Lisa, it always starts out with him not being able to connect with her. At the end of the day, they come to this understanding that the love they have for each other is actually enough, and maybe they don't need to share the same hobby. And so there's a great acceptance of you be you and I'll be me, and we'll still be great together.
And how has it evolved, you recording these episodes, from 1989? What did the scene look like when you're recording your lines to how you do it now? Has it changed? Is it the same way? Are you doing it remote now? How has that evolved?
Yeah, it has evolved. Actually, up until the pandemic, which was that would have been like season 31 or 32, we used to record all together like an old radio play, which is incredibly unusual. And no other animated show that I know of does it that way. Everybody else, you just go in and do your lines by yourself. Then the pandemic hit, so we couldn't go and record all together. So everybody started to record from home. I already had equipment because of the podcast, of course, but if you didn't have equipment, they sent you a little setup. And then at a certain point, after when people were allowed to go back to work a little bit, I started to go back into the studio, and so did a few of us. But now I go in by myself, and I do my lines solo. And for me, I always preferred doing it all together because, of course, the way you say a line informs the way I'm going to react to that. But I will say we're such a well-oiled machine now that I'm certainly capable of doing my lines basically in a vacuum. But I really liked working with my peers.
And do you think you guys will ever get back to that, like a special time? It's not. There hasn't been a memo out that you guys are all getting together anytime soon.
Yeah, no. I think recording all together is probably a thing of the past. For a while as well, because of the pandemic, we were also doing our table reads on Zoom, and there'd be like 65 people on this Zoom call, and the table read, which is the first time the writers hear the script out loud with the actors reading it, and then based on how that reading goes, that's when they would do the rewrites, and then 10 days later we record that episode. So, and then they send that to the animators and they animate. So we still do probably half of our read-throughs on Zoom, but we have started to go back and do the other half in person, which is fantastic because there's absolutely no substitute for the energy in that room when we're all together at the same table. The writers are all around, guests are invited. It's the best way to spend your Thursday morning. Who doesn't want to go and have an incredible laugh with this great cast of characters that you've been listening to all your life? It's pretty fantastic.
And do you have any Lisa Simpson memorabilia at your house? If I came over to Yeardley Smith's house, is there like a big portrait of Lisa somewhere in the home, or do you have all that stuff away?
I don't actually have a lot of sort of knickknacks. I have collected a lot of the animation cells over the years. Sadly, of course, and I think it was about season 12, they stopped hand painting the cells on the celluloid because they literally stopped making celluloid, and everybody had to go to computer animation. They still hand draw it, but now they do it in a different medium, of course. So they don't make cells anymore, but in the old back when you were a kid and somebody gave you a deck of what looked like cards, and if you thumbed through it quickly, a little character might do a little dance kind of thing.
Yeah, like a flip book kind of thing.
Literally what the cells are. Each cell represents a separate frame, and so there are thousands and thousands and thousands of them. They're much rarer now, but that's what I've spent some of my hard-earned money on in terms of memorabilia. They're so beautiful, and they mean so much to me, of course. So I love the art. What
kind of detective do you think Lisa Simpson would be on these cases? She would make a great detective, I believe.
Yeah, a fantastic detective, of course. We've actually done a couple of episodes where she's been a detective, and she's so analytical, and she's so detail-oriented and thorough that even if there are missteps along the way, ultimately, she's like, oh, my God, I get it, and it all falls into place. She's the best. I love her so much.
Check out the podcast, Small Town Dicks. You can go to smalltowndicks.com. They're coming to a city near you if you're out west in Portland, Seattle, Salt Lake City, or Denver. Our guest, Yeardley Smith, she's the host of Small Town Dicks, and I'm going to go listen to some more episodes, Small Town fam. Peace out.
Thank you, Gentry.